Idiots lead you. That is not an insult, it is a political diagnosis. The men you obey, the figures you admire, the titles you salute. Many of them have no real command of thought, no long-term strategy, no sharpness of mind. They repeat slogans. They perform confidence. They survive through inertia. And yet they rise. They rule. They legislate. You call them leaders. But in truth, they are figureheads of a system that rewards obedience, not intelligence. And they sit above you not because they are exceptional, but because you are still too afraid to be clear. You censor yourself. You hesitate in public. You polish your language. You bury your observations beneath civility. You think too much. They don't. And in that vacuum of clarity, they advance while you stall. You think the world is meritocratic. It isn't. It is performative, and the best performers are not the brightest. They are the least threatening to the structure that holds them in place. You still believe power is allocated by reason, that competence rises on its own. But I have seen republics and monarchies alike, and I tell you, intelligence alone does not govern. It observes, it endures, it hides. The fool, however, is promoted, not because he is valuable, but because he is manageable. He asks no dangerous questions. He makes no disruptive decisions. He speaks in generalities, appears confident in simplicity, and parrots the fears of the crowd. And for this he is elevated. Because real power hates real clarity, and the idiot, though empty, is a perfect vessel for noise. The truth is this: you are not ruled by superior minds. You are ruled by professional survivors. And their survival depends on your reluctance to name what you see. Until you learn to speak coldly, until you learn to see the machinery behind the mask, they will always appear taller than they are, because you are still bowing. The most dangerous illusion you still carry is the belief that intelligence leads to power, that if a man is wise, articulate, far-seeing, and measured, he will eventually rise to govern others. This is the delusion of the philosopher. The reality is far more brutal. Intelligence disrupts, clarity frightens, original thought threatens. But obedience? Obedience is rewarded. The man who can smile without knowing why, who can nod without understanding, who can speak just enough to be noticed but never enough to be questioned. That man becomes useful. And use, not brilliance, is what most systems reward. Look around you. In every bureaucracy, in every cabinet, in every institution bloated with titles and rigid hierarchy, you will find that the fastest rising men are not the most capable. They are the most consistent, the safest, the most willing to mirror what is already being said. The intelligent man is often a liability. He sees cracks in the foundation. He identifies risk. He proposes reform. These are all threats, not to the population, but to the established order. And so, he is sidelined, labeled difficult, too intense, too serious, too philosophical. He becomes the consultant, the professor, the ghost behind the curtain, rarely the one standing before the people. Why? Because intelligent men think in consequences, and power, especially power built on perception, prefers men who think in slogans. Understand this law. The system selects for predictability. It needs men who will not surprise it. It needs officials who will not suddenly act on conscience, who will not embarrass the institution by thinking for themselves. The idiot, because he does not possess dangerous clarity, is the perfect servant of continuity. He does not challenge, he preserves. He does not create, he performs. He does not see far, he sees only what is safe to say. This is why mediocrity rises, not because it is competent, but because it is non-threatening. You see it in political parties that rally behind slogans instead of policy. You see it in corporate boards where yes men outnumber thinkers. You see it in religious institutions that promote those who obey ritual but exile those who raise questions. Systems that survive prioritize repetition, and repetition is the domain of the fool. He thrives on patterns. He lives by scripts. He delivers expected outcomes. And in exchange, he is granted influence, not because he has earned it, but because he will never use it to burn the stage. But do not mistake this for an accident. It is design. Every structure fears the man who thinks independently. Because the moment you think independently, you no longer serve the ritual. You begin to question it. And questions threaten the myth that holds the structure together. The idiot, on the other hand, believes in the myth completely. He defends it. He becomes its face. And so long as the myth is alive, he remains on top. You think this only happens in weak states, but I tell you it happens most in strong ones. Because strong systems have more to preserve and therefore more to fear from original minds. Rome became a machine of ceremony before it collapsed. The church protected fools in robes more than visionaries in exile. Even Florence, my own city, rewarded those who kept the aristocracy calm, not those who told the truth about its corruption. Fools, when properly positioned, make excellent shields. And the rulers behind them use their idiocy like a mask. The people scream at the puppet, never noticing the hand that moves it. So remember this: intelligence alone will not elevate you. It must be shaped, disguised, delayed. If you wish to rise, you must understand that the path is not made for you. It is made for the predictable, the polite, the harmless. And if you are not these things, you must learn to move through the system like smoke, quietly, invisibly, until you are too deeply embedded to be removed. And when that moment comes, when they finally see you, they will call you an overnight success. But you will know you have simply mastered the one thing they never saw coming: how to be intelligent without being feared, until it is too late. One of the greatest weaknesses of the intelligent man is that he assumes others think as he does, that they plan, that they foresee, that they weigh risk against reward. And because he assumes this, he gives too much credit to those above him. He imagines that power is guided by strategy, that behind every policy, every decree, every command, there is a coherent vision. But here is the truth. Most people in power have no idea what they are doing. They are not malicious geniuses. They are unthinking custodians of decisions they barely understand. They are improvising badly while clinging to roles that reward image over substance. When you walk through the chambers of government, of military leadership, of institutional hierarchy, you are not walking through a world of sharp minds. You are walking through a theater, a carefully constructed illusion of competence. The emperor wears robes, speaks with confidence, holds a scepter, but inside he is a frightened actor hoping the script doesn't change. The speechwriter, the aide, the technical advisor, the strategist, they are the ones who understand the stakes. The man in the spotlight, he just remembers lines. It is dangerous to assume otherwise, because if you believe the people above you are operating with intelligence, you will obey their madness. You will try to find logic in chaos. You will assume they see what you see and simply choose otherwise. And that assumption will destroy you. Because when you begin to obey fools as if they are philosophers, you tie yourself to the wheel of their incompetence. And when it breaks, as it always does, you go down with it. I have seen princes whose only gift was timing. They rose not through brilliance, but by arriving when a vacuum appeared. And once seated, they ruled not with vision, but with inertia. Decisions delayed, conflicts ignored, delegation mistaken for strategy, and the people, blinded by the throne, assumed wisdom where there was only fear. The court whispered of his mysterious silence. I called it what it was: ignorance concealed by dignity. This is why I say, do not confuse position with capacity. A high seat does not elevate the mind. It often blinds it. Power insulates. It protects the fool from consequence. It shields him from correction. And over time, he begins to believe the lie others told in jest, that he is the source of wisdom, not its echo. So how must you think? You must assume nothing. You must test everything. You must learn to differentiate between command and competence. When a man speaks with authority, do not ask if he's confident. Ask if he's coherent. When a leader gives an order, do not admire his firmness. Ask who truly benefits. And when you see someone rise to power, do not ask if he is intelligent. Ask instead, who placed him there and why? But eventually the mask slips. Crisis reveals incompetence, and the man who looked untouchable becomes exposed. The myth shatters, and the people panic. How could we have followed him? The answer is simple. You followed him because you assumed he was smarter than you, and he led you straight to the edge. Never again believe that those who rule must know what they're doing. Most are terrified of being found out, and the few who aren't, they're too distracted to see what's coming. If you are not thinking independently, coldly, strategically, you are already under the rule of someone who isn't thinking at all. You assume that to stay in power one must demonstrate brilliance, foresight, achievement. But this is not true. Not in republics, not in monarchies, not in democracies. Idiots keep power not because they perform well, but because they know how to outlast the moment. Their genius lies in their patience. Their skill is not in creation, but in survival. And survival does not require intelligence. It only requires tolerance for embarrassment, an ability to avoid blame, and the instinct to say less when things go wrong. The fool in power does not attempt to solve, he attempts to wait. When crisis strikes, he deflects. When questioned, he stalls. When decisions must be made, he delegates. He surrounds himself with people more competent than he is, not because he values their minds, but because they will absorb the consequences of failure. If they succeed, he claims credit. If they fail, he fires them. He survives not by fixing the system, but by letting others die in it first. His one true gift is knowing when to be invisible. When a scandal brews, he disappears. When public anger rises, he offers vague promises, never deadlines. When cornered, he cries loyalty, tradition, national interest. He never speaks clearly, because clear words can be measured. He never defines his intent, because defined goals can be used to prove failure. He speaks only to calm, not to inform. His tongue is a weapon of delay. This is why he is so hard to remove. Because no one can ever point to the exact moment he failed. His mistakes are blurred across departments. His signature is on nothing of substance. He is always just distant enough from responsibility, just close enough to celebration. And when the structure creaks under his weight, he pivots. New advisors, new messaging, new distractions. He rebrands his failure as resilience. And the people, frustrated, tired, and desperate, prefer to keep the fool they know rather than risk the unknown. It is not that he is loved, it is that he is endured, and you must understand, fools do not fear truth. They fear blame. That is their one obsession. They will rewrite history, falsify data, purge critics, and perform sincerity. Not to be right, but to be safe. Their entire strategy is rooted in the avoidance of direct consequence. And that is why they often outlast the wise. Because the wise man acts, and when he acts, he creates risk. And when risk fails, he falls. But the fool never acts, never risks, and therefore never visibly fails. In courts, I have seen rulers survive multiple crises not by leading but by hiding behind others. Letting generals fail, diplomats falter, ministers burn. The wise man, because he is capable, takes on responsibility. The fool, because he is incapable, becomes a figure of permanence. He's like furniture, obvious, useless, but hard to throw away. He keeps power through inaction, inaudibility, and inertia. He makes himself so bland, so institutional, that removing him feels like destroying the foundation itself. And he survives not by inspiring loyalty, but by making replacement feel uncertain. In a world that fears collapse, the idiot offers something seductive: predictability. You must learn this now. In politics, survival matters more than excellence. A fool who speaks carefully, moves slowly, and avoids drama will often stay longer than a brilliant man who speaks the truth too quickly. The system prefers smooth mediocrity to sharp clarity. It rewards those who pose no threat to their neighbors, even if they pose a threat to the nation. So do not expect fools to fall on their own. They don't collapse. They calcify. They sink into the system like rot into wood. And unless someone rips them out with force, they stay. Not because they're rooted in greatness, but because they've mastered one simple truth. If you make yourself hard to blame and harder to replace, you can remain forever. The intelligent man believes that once he speaks the truth, once he presents the solution, once he exposes the failure, he will be recognized. He believes in the nobility of clarity. He believes that truth is like a flame. If you light it, others will gather around it. But I must tell you, he is wrong. Systems, especially powerful ones, do not reward truth. They reward submission. They reward rhythm. They reward comfort. The truth, if it threatens the illusion, is punished swiftly and without hesitation. And why? Because truth destabilizes. It reveals. It disrupts the dance of ritual. The intelligent man walks into the room and says, "Here is the flaw. Here is the danger. Here is the answer." And in doing so, he forces others to make a decision, either act or be exposed. Most choose the latter. And so the truth-teller is treated not as a savior, but as a threat. His words are labeled arrogant, his tone too serious, his presence too intense, not because he is wrong, but because he cannot be ignored. This is why so many smart men remain on the outside. They speak too early, they speak too clearly, they assume that merit will carry them forward, but systems are not meritocratic. They are self-preserving. They fear what changes them. They fear what outgrows them, and the man who sees too far, moves too fast, or speaks too directly becomes a liability, not a leader. I have seen men with vision destroyed by those with vanity. The clever advisor is cast out while the smiling fool is promoted. Why? Because the advisor dared to be right before the structure was ready to admit its mistake. The fool, on the other hand, posed no threat. He said what was acceptable. He echoed what was known. He offered no friction, and so he was kept. This is the great tragedy of brilliance. It is not that it lacks power. It is that it assumes power wants to evolve. Most power wants only to survive. It wants applause, not accuracy. It wants agreement, not growth. And so, the man who brings uncomfortable clarity must either learn to delay his truths or be sacrificed for them. That is your warning. Do not throw your vision into a crowd unprepared to receive it. Do not expose a structure unless you are ready to replace it. Do not speak your full mind unless you are also prepared to be cast out for it. Intelligence must be weaponized, not just displayed. Truth must be aimed, not just declared. You must learn to wrap your clarity in ambiguity, to time your revelation, to speak in puzzles if necessary, until you hold the strength to enforce what you know. Until then, you speak only what stabilizes your position. And once your position is strong enough, you act, not before, because the graveyard of history is filled with men who were right too soon. Do not be one of them. If intelligence draws knives, then stupidity is a shield. That is why I advise the wise man to wear the mask of the fool, not because he is a coward, but because he understands timing. In the presence of mediocrity, brilliance is not admired, it is feared. It disrupts the rhythm. It shines light where others are trying to sleep. And so the wise man must dim his lamp, not extinguish it, but dim it. Enough to be underestimated, enough to be ignored until it serves him not to be. There is power in being misunderstood, in being seen as slightly slow, slightly unsure, slightly confused. The court smiles at you. The rivals look away. You are not watched. You are not marked. And beneath that mask you calculate everything. This is how the true strategist survives, by playing down, not up. You allow the fool to stand on stage while you design the script. You let him speak. You let him stumble. And all the while you pull the levers behind the curtain. When things go well, he is celebrated. When they collapse, he is sacrificed. You remain. History has rewarded this tactic more times than it has punished it. Fabius Maximus, the Roman general, was mocked for his slowness, his reluctance to face Hannibal head-on. They called him the delayer. But his silence was strategy. His caution was a trap. And when the enemy grew overconfident, he struck. Not as a fool, but as a man who understood that being underestimated was the perfect battlefield. The same can be seen in courts. The quiet brother who inherits the crown, the ignored minister who becomes regent, the harmless uncle who gains control when the throne falls into crisis. These men did not fight their way to the front. They let the loud destroy themselves. They nodded, they smiled, they agreed. And when the moment came, they moved once, only once, and changed everything. Even I in my time learned this lesson late. I spoke too sharply. I revealed too much. I underestimated the comfort others had in their own ignorance, and I paid the price. Exile teaches a man to sharpen his tongue, yes, but more importantly, it teaches him to sheathe it, and to learn when silence or even a false step backward is the only way forward. So here is your rule. Do not show your full capacity. Let them speak first. Let them overestimate their own influence. Let them believe they are guiding the conversation. When they laugh at you, do not defend yourself. When they explain something you already understand, let them. Every moment they see you as lesser is a moment you gain positioning, because the man they ignore is the man they never prepare for. And when you strike, it will feel, to them, as if it came from nowhere. But to you it will feel like the final move in a game you started long before they even knew the board was set. No idiot rules alone. This is the truth behind every throne, every pulpit, every polished podium. The fool may wear the crown, but behind him stands a procession of silent minds, technocrats, fixers, handlers, strategists. Men who understand systems, men who build the policies, write the speeches, edit the chaos, and absorb the blame. The fool survives not by intelligence, but by attaching himself to those who possess it, then appearing as their master. In truth, he is their puppet, but the people rarely see the strings. Every incompetent ruler is held aloft by the machinery of smarter men. The king who cannot read still governs because others read to him. The politician who stumbles through numbers still passes laws because others do the calculations. The CEO who knows nothing of the product still grows the company because others build the product and hide his incompetence behind a brand. This is how power functions, not through brilliance at the top, but through resilience at the base. The structure serves the mask, but here is where the clever man must look. Not at the throne, but at the room behind it. Not at the figure who speaks, but at the hand that placed the notes in front of him. Because that is where real power resides, not in visibility, but in design. The fool rules on camera. The wise man rules the camera angle, and if you seek to last, do not envy the man with applause. Study the one who gave him the words. Understand the trade. The idiot becomes the face, the vessel, the myth. He is attacked, blamed, celebrated. He is the focus of the mob, the center of the spectacle. But the men beneath him, the enablers, they move unobserved. They can change policy without making headlines. They can fire subordinates without press releases. They can build, dismantle, and reframe, all while the fool absorbs every consequence like a sponge. And this is the Machiavellian opportunity. To rule beneath the fool, to move beside the throne, never on it, to become essential but never exposed. The moment your name becomes known, you become a target. But if your work is invisible, your influence becomes untouchable. You advise, you guide, you correct. And when the fool is removed, you are already behind the next one, ready to shape him too. This is how the world remains stable even when the leader is unstable, because behind the curtain the same men are pulling the strings. Only the face changes, and the audience, trained to look at faces, never sees the continuity of power beneath the costume. So ask yourself, do you want applause or do you want permanence? The fool may command the stage, but the man behind the curtain decides what happens when the lights go out. You may laugh at the fool in power. You may mock his empty words, his bloated confidence, his embarrassing displays of authority. But understand this, he still rules you. He still signs the decrees. He still controls the machinery that determines your freedom, your reputation, your livelihood. And that is no joke. You can be smarter. You can be more strategic. But if you do not protect yourself, if you do not learn how to survive beneath his incompetence, you will still be crushed by his decisions. Intelligence is no defense unless it is applied politically. So how do you protect yourself from the idiot who rules you? First, do not challenge him directly. That is the mistake of the naive man. You think exposing his stupidity will make others abandon him. It won't. The system that placed him there already knows what he is. It doesn't care. It defends him not out of loyalty but out of self-preservation. He is the symbol, the lightning rod. The fool is valuable precisely because he draws fire away from the true architecture of control. When you attack him, you reveal yourself as dangerous, not to him, but to the structure. And the structure responds. You lose. Second, use his need for image. The idiot is obsessed with appearances. He wants to be seen as decisive, beloved, visionary. This vanity is his leash. Feed it. Present your ideas in language that flatters him. Make your solutions look like his instincts. Let him wear your wisdom like a borrowed robe. Do not correct him. Guide him through suggestion, not contradiction. Let him believe your strategy was his. Let him announce your work as his own. You lose the credit, but you gain influence. And influence in a world ruled by idiots is survival. Third, build horizontally. If you cannot move upward, move sideways. Form quiet alliances. Strengthen your network among those who see clearly but speak carefully. Let fools rise. You stay rooted. You become the man they rely on when crisis appears, because crisis always comes. The fool will flail. And when he does, the structure will search for someone stable, quiet, competent. Be that man. Be the one already in position, already trusted by those who matter. Not the public, but the private minds behind the throne. Fourth, never attach your identity to outcomes. The fool makes decisions without understanding consequence. If you tie your reputation to his actions, you will fall with him. Protect your name. Speak less. Document more. Always be able to prove what you advised, what you warned, what you did. When the fool is eventually sacrificed, and he will be, you must be able to show you were not the cause. Let the record defend you while your voice remains calm. Finally, remain emotionally distant. It is tempting to become outraged, to shout, to mock. But anger makes you readable, predictable, weak. The man who survives idiocy is the man who observes it with detached clarity. You do not panic when the ship turns. You check the wind. You do not scream when the fool gives orders. You evaluate the structure that obeys him, and you position yourself not to resist the wave, but to ride it until it breaks. And when it breaks, you are already ashore, dry, silent, watching the others drown in noise. The world is not fair. It is structured, and that structure does not collapse under stupidity. It endures through it. So do not waste time wishing for a smarter ruler. He won't come. Protect yourself instead. Think beneath the spectacle. Move behind the noise. Let the fool reign, and prepare your kingdom in the shadows. Let others reach for the crown. Let them fight for the spotlight, the praise, the applause. You, if you are wise, will rule beneath it all. Because that is where true power lives, not in the man whose name is sung, but in the one whose silence decides when he falls. Ruling beneath the fool is not defeat. It is design. It is the ultimate Machiavellian advantage, to possess control without exposure, to write policy without blame, to build the world while another takes the stage. Understand the nature of figureheads. They exist to absorb light. They are the mask the system wears. Behind them, the machine grinds forward, crafted, managed, and corrected by men whose names are rarely known, but whose influence bends nations. These are the men you must emulate. They do not beg for attention. They shape outcomes. They speak into the ear, not into the microphone. They remain in place across regimes, across crises, across leaders. While fools come and go, these men stay. They inherit the real throne, the one built from networks, not noise. To rule beneath the fool, you must master two things: timing and restraint. You must know when to step forward and when to disappear, when to speak through him and when to let him burn. Your value is not in being seen, it is in being needed. Become the man he calls when the pressure mounts. Be the only one who understands the mechanics of his own government better than he does. Do not threaten him. Do not outshine him. Do not compete. Let him rise. Let him believe he is emperor. while you decide which crisis he will solve next, and how. When he succeeds, you smile. When he fails, you survive. That is the advantage of invisibility. You are not wedded to his identity. You are not tied to his decline. You are useful, therefore protected. And in time, when another fool replaces him, you are still there. Because fools are replaceable. Strategists are not. This is how empires are built, not by geniuses at the top, but by men behind the curtain. The Roman Senate manipulated emperors like puppets. Chinese eunuchs advised and outlived dozens of emperors. Venetian merchants controlled the Doge from behind closed doors. In Florence, it was not always the prince who ruled, but the banker, the advisor, the shadow. These men understood what most never do, that fame fades, but structure lasts. So while others clamor to be seen, you build. While others perform, you calculate. While others rise and fall, you position yourself beyond the cycle. Let the people focus on their false king. Let the cameras obsess over the wrong name. You know the truth, that power lies not in the throne, but in the mind that placed it. You do not need to destroy the fool. He is already a prisoner. You only need to remain essential to the machine that props him up. And when the time comes, when the system must cleanse itself of incompetence, you will be the one they turn to. Not because you were loud, but because you were indispensable. The world you live in is a theater, a stage of flashing lights, moving mouths, painted smiles. You are trained to look toward the center, to admire the figure who speaks, who promises, who stands beneath banners and titles. But visibility is not authority. It is often the opposite. The visible man is a shield, a sacrifice, a tool of distraction. He is made loud so that others may move silently. He is made important so that others may operate freely. Never mistake the one they watch for the one who rules. This is the final truth you must carry. Real power does not announce itself. It does not seek applause. It does not need validation. It does not decorate itself in medals nor posture before cameras. Real power works in silence. It lives in shadows. It survives every regime change, every election, every collapse, because it never placed itself in the direct line of fire. The fool at the top may wear the crown, but it burns him. His time is always short, his mistakes always public, his fall always inevitable. But the man behind him, the one who prepared the script, who designed the stage, who chose the mask, he remains. Because he never entered the game to be seen. He entered to win. You must now ask yourself, do I want power or do I want praise? Because they are not the same. The man who seeks praise becomes a slave to perception. He feeds on approval, and approval is unstable. One mistake and it vanishes, one scandal and it turns to hatred. But the man who builds power beneath the noise is untouchable. He is not loved. He is not hated. He is feared quietly. And that fear lasts longer than any public love ever could. You were born into a world where idiocy is rewarded with office, and clarity is punished with exile. Accept this, then adapt. Learn the laws of fools. Learn to predict their moves. Learn to survive beneath them, not by shouting, but by calculating. Your power lies not in resisting the fool, but in making yourself necessary to his rule while planning your own. So speak less, move with care, and when they laugh, let them. Because the man who is laughed at today may be the one writing their history tomorrow. Idiots may run the world, but they do not build it, and they do not keep it. The wise do, quietly, permanently, without permission. If you've ever obeyed someone you knew was a fool, write, I no longer mistake noise for power. Subscribe. This isn't entertainment, it's ammunition.